What's up, bros? Welcome to another Brograph Brocast. I'm Dave.
And I am David.
And David, are you going to the mall later today? David Ariev is with us today in place of Matt Milstead, who is still on vacation.
Still partying.
He's partying it up in Hawaii right now. So that's fun. He went to Disney. I saw pictures.
There were lots of Pokemon there.
He was collecting lots of Pokemon. And now he's in Hawaii, so good for him. And he'll be back in a couple days, which is good because I need the help. This is Brograph Podcast, which is a supplement to Brograph.com, which is a motion graphics tutorial website. And so on the podcast, what we do, if you're a new listener, is we talk about graphics, and we talk about motion graphics, 3D, animation, visual effects, the business, the industry, all of it. And we try and dig into details, stuff you usually can't do on a tutorial or a video or something like that, for your listening pleasure while you're driving down the road or working at the office or what have you. So we have a full show. This would be the Q&A show because we have lots of questions. We're going to try and answer them. And I'm going to try my best because I have pneumonia right now.
It sucks.
And I've had pneumonia before, quite a few times, unfortunately, but it's never hurt. I've never felt it before.
Your lungs are hurting? What's hurting?
Like, it's better today than it was yesterday, but like it makes it hurt to breathe. And personally, I've had a pulmonary embolism in the past and was in the hospital for that, so I lost partial lung function. So like it's double tough for me to breathe at this point, but I can't complain because I just got off the phone with my buddy, my other buddy, David.
So many Davids
who I just talked to him for the first time since he had a lung transplant. So,
oh yeah, you told me about this. This is crazy.
Yeah, so I was talking to him. You heard me. I was talking to him on the phone here before the show started, and he's like, "Oh, you got pneumonia?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can't complain though."
Yeah,
compared to what you had, but
totally.
It sounds like he's doing phenomenal, which is just absolutely amazing. And so I'm going to try and get through this the best I can. You might hear me cough or breathe hard every now and then. I apologize, but.
You're literally putting your blood, sweat, and tears into this podcast.
Yeah.
Good on you.
I haven't been sleeping. Whatever I'm taking, like I'll sleep for 10 minutes and I'll have a crazy dream and I'll wake up and I'll put on The Simpsons. And then
Did The Simpsons help you get back to sleep?
It's my go-to. When I'm sick, I watch marathons of The Simpsons.
Oh, that sounds... Yeah, that's what I do when I'm sick, too. I played all of Resident Evil 4 when I was the most sick in college, and that was actually made the sickness so much better.
I play video games sometimes when I'm sick, but, man, it doesn't... You're not really resting when you're playing video games. Get your heart rate up and stuff, and so... I just... It's my comfort thing, because, totally. Simpsons is, like, my favorite ever, and so... It's my comforting thing to like be laying there and be all hopped up on coding and watching seasons 1 through 10. None of the new stuff. That's all garbage.
Yeah, forget the new stuff. So you're also doing Matt's like sleep thing. So you're doing it for real. Like he kept talking about the 20-minute whatever polyphasic sleep cycle crap. So you're actually going for it, not intentionally, but
not intentionally. And I'm like hearing things. It's really weird.
Oh,
like I'll doze off. Like this afternoon, I was still trying to get like at least an hour of sleep, and I hadn't done it yet. And I dozed off for like 5 minutes, and I swore I heard my daughter come up to me and ask me if she could borrow $5.
Did you give her $5?
And I woke up immediately. I'm like, what was that? Like, it was so real. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's the medication plus lack of sleep, what it is, but...
You're hallucinating. That's crazy. Whenever I get, like, a really bad fever, I actually do hallucinate. And there's some pretty hilarious stories from when I was in college and with my roommate. Like, just all out. I thought I was crazy and, acting totally out of my mind. Yeah.
It's nuts what your mind will do, man.
Yeah.
You think you got it together, and then that kind of thing happens, and you're like, man,
You're
it's
just
so easy
one
to
step
lose
away
it.
from tipping over the edge.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm behind. I'm behind on work, especially with Matt being gone and having pneumonia. So, like, my whole weekend was pretty much out the door, and my work and everything is all pushed over. So the plugin, I was planning on releasing the point update to the plugin. I apologize, it's not out yet. It's been fixed for a while. I just have to roll it out, and I've just been completely overwhelmed. But it will happen, so just hang in there. So, and also, like, I had a really kind of a bad week this week as far as business goes. You may have seen my Facebook post.
Yeah, I did.
Man, there's a difference. Like, I had a couple people comment on my post on Facebook, and they said, "Well, that's just part of being in the business. You lose business sometimes, and this and that." And I'm like, yeah, but like, I'm used to losing business that I don't have yet.
Right.
Because it's an ongoing cycle, right? You'll have, I don't know, like, it's kind of a part of being a business and being a contractor. There's always stuff in the works. It's always just floating there.
Yeah, and it might happen, it might not happen.
Right.
Yeah. Totally.
And that's kind of how it works, is you just have to always have these things that might happen hovering around you, and then hope that you can reach out and grab one of them.
Right.
And or one of them is going to hit, and, especially like on the big stuff. You come across, oh man, this big project's going to come up, we might get, and people are making you promises, and over the years you realize that a lot of people make big promises and they don't happen. So you kind of learn to deal with that, and you know that not everything's going to go through, things are going to fizzle out and whatnot. But for me, it was different this week because there were things that were already like done deals.
Right.
Like they were like, we were starting on them. They were verified. They were with existing clients. That's why it kind of hit me really hard. And within 5 minutes, I lost $4,000 worth of work.
It sucks.
And the weird part about it is it was from two different people with the same name. I'm not going to mention the name, but a weird, obscure name.
It's got to be more Davids.
No, it's an obscure name of somebody who I've never met anybody with that name in person before. But there's two clients with the same name, and they both emailed me within 5 minutes and had to cancel on things that were going to happen either that day or the next day. Like really big. One of them was a really big visual effects thing. And
oh yeah, you were going to make a volcano. Can I say that?
We won't go. We won't talk anymore about that. But actually, I mean, it in all, it's good. All in all, it's good because one is a regular client, and they're they'll give us more work later. But like with the VFX thing, it's actually going to turn out good in the long run because I think we're going to get some other business off of it. But
Sweet.
It's just a hard thing, and it doesn't. I think that it doesn't matter how long you've been doing it. That it always kind of hurts to lose a large chunk of money like that.
See, if you're like me and you're more of a noob, you don't have any idea what jobs are coming up. They are all a surprise to you. So I'm never disappointed. So it's great.
But again, it's not like, oh, somebody's promising, in 4 months from now you're going to get this gig, and then it never happens. It's like, no, this is happening. And
oh, I see. So it was like
you're going to work on this afternoon.
It was like completely locked down. You'd been talking about it for a long time, and then everything just dropped off.
Right.
That
like
sucks.
Completely booked the whole thing. And
now, do you get money for what is that called? If a client cancels on you and you could have been accepting other work in that time, sometimes they'll actually pay you something, which is nice.
Yeah, in the case of the ongoing client, it's something where they gave enough notice, and it's totally fine. And it's not something with an ongoing client that you would want to say, oh, well, now you owe me money, because it wouldn't really hold well with the client to like hound them for money that you didn't do any work for.
Right, totally.
And expect to do more work for them.
Right. But I mean, if you're holding a big chunk of time, especially if it gets like right up to that time or whatever, then that could be a negotiable thing.
Yeah, the thing was that we were starting and writing the contract at the same time, and
Gotcha.
Just one of those situations where it's a good lead on a good client, and I don't want to kind of spoil it or put a bad taste in their mouth by immediately with a new client who I've never worked for before, canceling a gig and then them being like, oh, now you owe me money.
You gotta pay.
Yeah, because. Yeah, because I know that there is more work coming, and because of the situation, they promised to give us first dibs on some other upcoming stuff. It's actually a really cool gig, and once it actually happens, I'll explain what it is on the show. It's actually pretty fun.
Sweet.
So it's like everybody on my Facebook thread said, everything happens for a reason. Blah blah blah. Something. God, I don't know. I mean, just
something God.
Everybody had one of those types of phrases to say, that it will work out in the long run. I understand.
Yeah, my phrase is that sucks, bro.
Yeah,
that's all I got.
It's mainly that in that moment, it really does kind of twist the knife, so to speak. And
you should look at it as a chance to study something cool.
Yeah.
Turn it around. Be positive.
Now, I did have a lot of work to do anyway, so I managed to fill my time. Cool. Part of it was that it was going to be kind of a rush gig. So I was going to just have a slammed, like crazy work through the weekend type of thing going.
So now you get to be sick and relax and watch The Simpsons.
Right. And well, that's the other thing about it. If I would have done it now, then I would have gotten pneumonia in the middle of it, and it would have just been a disaster.
So there you go. Everything happens for a reason.
Right. So I tried to fill the time actually by starting to build a new antenna for my ham radio.
Cool.
And started on that, and I got about halfway through it before I got sick. So now I've got all this PVC pipe sitting in the backyard with one side of it spray painted and the other side not spray painted. So I'll have to continue that later. So just, I don't know, part of the learning process of owning a business, just dealing with those losses. So
it's worth it though, for sure.
Yeah. Something I learned this week in working on another project though, is that important samples in Octane make a really big difference in render time.
Important samples,
I was not aware of the big difference in render time it could make.
I mean, there are like two checkboxes where you can use importance sampling, right? There's one on...
Oh, there's two?
I thought so. I wish I had Octane in front of me so I could check on that. But there's one that's like on by default in... Oh, I'm going to sound like a dumb butt here. I know there's one in your HDRI, right?
Yes, in your environment tag.
Yeah. But yeah, I was always under the impression that checking that box makes things faster, and I don't know why, but it does, so do it.
Checking it makes it... See, having it on actually made it slower for me this week. Yeah.
Huh. Weird. So what was your project, and how did you test that?
I'm trying to remember. I can't even remember what the project was at this point. And I worked on so many things. Let me see if I can remember by looking at my thing on the side here. Man. Yeah, I can't remember. I had a sky mixed with some other stuff. It does make a difference in certain scenes. And like if you have important samples on in certain situations, like it will make like a giant, I'm talking like a giant difference. Like,
right.
An object will have all sorts of noise all over it big time. But there's some situations where important samples doesn't really change your scene that much. Doesn't really change the look of it that much. So sometimes you have to kind of look at that and see if you really need it. In my case, it was a matter of like a minute and a half per frame difference. No way. Wow. Yeah.
How did you like end up tracking that down? Like there are so many, things you could click and unclick, and, obviously you can change my go-to is like, render settings and taking, bounces all the way down. So like you're, ambient and all of those things all the way down, and then bring them up one at a time. So you can see the minimum you'll need to like get the look you're after. So like I always go to the render settings, straight out the bat. But what made you think to untick that button? Because that's like something I would never think to do.
Well, for one thing, it's a button, it's a checkbox that's built into our own plugin. And so I was using the Octane Brograph Quick Sky.
Gotcha.
And I was trying to, and I have that off by default in the plugin. Mm-hmm. And I think I had checked it on at some point for some reason just to see if it made a difference. Mm-hmm. And I was looking at my renders and I was like, this isn't that complicated and it shouldn't be taking that long per frame.
Right.
And so I was like, why is this taking so long? And that's kind of why I thought about it, because I had checked it purposely. And I was like, wow, this really makes a huge difference. So in my case, it didn't make a difference in how it looked. It just made a difference in time.
Right.
If you put the two side by side, there's really no reason. But it all depends on your scene, really.
For sure. So well, you should send me that scene, because I'd be really interested to check that out on my computer too. Just to like get to the bottom of, I mean, I also now want to do some research and see what that's even all about,
Yeah, I'll look it up and see. I was trying to think what else. I think I was doing some stuff with cloth, which I actually had some normal maps and stuff going on. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have any displacement. At first I thought, well, maybe it was displacement. I'm like, no, that's normals.
Right.
So I don't know. Yeah. So I'll have to go back. I'll find it and I'll send it to you. You can check it out.
Cool.
And okay, Next Limit, who makes the RealFlow plugin, actually contacted us, and they're doing a showcase of stuff. And they're going to showcase the picture that Matt made of the Brograph Cola.
No way. That's
with
awesome.
The water going through it. So
Dude,
that's going to be
cool.
on their Cinema 4D plugin showcase.
That's rad.
With Brograph on it, so that's cool. iTunes, I have an update on remember our iTunes situation with search, where I was saying you can't search for Cinema 4D and find us.
Yep.
They escalated it, and I sent them something back, and I said, any word on this? And they sent me back an email this week, and they said, if it's in the show description, it's not searchable.
Gotcha.
Like, okay, seriously? So it has to be in the name of the show, in the title of the episode, or in the author's name.
So just add motion graphics to, or wait, what do you need to add Cinema 4D to every?
Cinema 4D, but it just, I don't know. I'm very.
This is the Brograph Cinema 4D motion graphics,
right?
3D podcast.
Well, if I were going to put it anywhere, I'd put it in the show title.
Right.
And of the not the show title, the episode title.
Gotcha.
And the episode title always says episode number 1, episode number 2. Like, that's how I like to do it. Mm-hmm. And so now I'm going to have to go back and just add the words Cinema 4D to each show title name, just so we get ridiculous. Cinema 4D.
So, like, what would that look like?
It would say episode 001-Cinema 4D and motion graphics.
Okay.
Episode 002-Cinema 4D
and motion graphics.
And what I don't get is there's some shows out there, when I search for Cinema 4D, they don't have that in their name or an episode title. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, what am I missing?
Yeah, they're cheating somehow. You got to figure that out.
I don't understand it.
The iTunes stuff is all just, voodoo as far as I'm concerned. I've always heard that it's just bizarre, and like Apple's everything's proprietary and secretive and screw all that. I don't know. It's so annoying.
And working with After Effects again this week, I still cannot get over the fact that the image cache sometimes just does not want to release. Just refuses to release.
Oh, you mean like if you purge everything, then you've still got an image cache sometimes, or what?
Yeah, I'll go back and I'll re-render an image sequence, and I'll go in, and it won't be every frame. It'll just be like every other frame. You do a RAM preview. You go in, you reload your media, you hit the RAM preview, and like every couple frames, there's these glitches of old frames.
Yeah.
I'm just like, what is the deal?
I've had that happen so many times. After Effects can be a really big annoyance. But yeah, it's like, do you quit the program and go back? Or, I mean, sometimes I'll just like tweak like a curve setting very slightly so it has to, update or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you'll do image cache purge, you'll do
purge
all. Sometimes I'll go into the terminal.
Oh, really?
And purge all my RAM.
Gotcha. I don't think I've done that before. You'll have to show me how to do that one.
What you do is you just go into your terminal and you type purge, but now in the newer versions you have to type sudo purge.
Gotcha.
sudo.
Yeah, that's the super user command, right?
Yeah, and you have to type in your password, but that like super clears your RAM. And you don't have to use it as much now because the way that like the last couple versions of OS X works, it manages your virtual RAM differently. And so you don't have kind of the RAM walls that you hit before. So like usually my memory is just super low because it's using my SSD and it's transferring stuff back and forth. But I don't understand. Why can't Adobe just go in and say, hey, look, forget all of this crap on the timeline. Just forget it. Just pretend that it didn't exist. Start over. Yeah. Because sometimes you'll even quit After Effects.
Right.
And you open After Effects and there's cache frames from
still there.
Yeah. I'm like, where is that? It's all cleared. It's all gone. How is it still there? I don't get it.
Yep.
So, and Ahmed, I've seen him post a couple things on Facebook. I tried to send him a message. This is the guy who does the Cinema 4D Octane plugin.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
He lives in Turkey. And if you've been watching the news, they tried to have a military coup there,
right?
And failed.
There are like 1,400 people wounded and a ton of people, dead and stuff. Yeah, it's crazy. It's like every day there's just more craziness. But yeah, hopefully he's okay.
Well, it didn't let me message him. Usually like if you don't know somebody on Facebook as a personal friend, you can message him. Like gotcha. I've emailed him before, and I've sent him stuff in the Octane forums, and I've talked to him on the Octane Facebook group, but I'm not personally friends with him on Facebook.
Right.
And so I tried to add him, and I tried to send a message. Like it won't let me do it, and I don't know if that's because of the internet shut off thing that they had there, or if because it's just different over there. Or how that works, but I was like, man, I hope he's okay over there.
Yeah, seriously.
So we'll send our best over there
for sure.
And so what else do we have here? Jeremy, who's been on the show before a while back.
Don't know if which one was that? Which episode was that?
We talked about mostly like business stuff. Owning your own company.
Yeah. So he was the super awesome genius business dude that talked way over my head when I was listening.
I mean, we've had a couple people talk about business.
Right.
I'm trying to remember. I don't remember specifically what we talked about. Or I bring it up, but he decided to dive into Octane because he's a Cinema 4D guy, but lately he's been doing more print stuff. We probably talked about print on the show. He does a lot more print stuff, a lot more video stuff, editing, a lot of After Effects stuff, but he had kind of strayed from doing the 3D stuff just because that's just not where he was in his business. Just like Matt and I, our business like gravitates toward like 95% graphics, even though we will edit something, we just don't do it that much. So he decided to take the plunge to Octane, so we built our 11th Octane monster.
So many Octane monsters, that's awesome.
And so he got a tower, we got two 980 Ti's, we got the power supply, and here's the difference though. When we were talking about doing the build, I was like, well, the best thing to do is to find this tower maybe on Craigslist or something. So we found one that was legit, went and talked to the guy, and he talked him down on the price if he didn't give him the graphics card with it.
Gotcha.
And I had forgot to tell him about the fact that sometimes you need to put the old graphics card back in.
Oh, really?
Because if you would need to do an upgrade or something where the NVIDIA driver isn't going to be active.
Oh, that does make sense. Yeah.
You might need it. But, okay, so here's the thing we ran into. I was like, okay, well, if we're going to do it without, we'll probably be fine. And I went over to his place. And I could have grabbed my old card if I would have thought about it, but I didn't. So we're over there. We built everything, have it all looking pretty and wired up and good to go. And then we turn it on, and it's booting, but we're not getting a picture.
Gotcha.
We're like, man, why are we not getting a picture here? And I'm like, okay, let's step through this, because what NVIDIA does with their drivers is they release these alternate drivers that are like F01, F02, and some of them are considered experimental drivers, and they're still like Apple supported, because Apple's supporting the driver for the sake of like, what do you call the other cards? The K5000 or whatever they are.
Yep.
Not the GeForce series, but the other one.
Quadro.
The Quadro. Yeah. The super expensive ones that you need for certain things, but not really for Octane.
Right. Yeah. I've got some stories about that.
So it's you might have told that story on the show.
Yeah, I might have. How I convinced my previous company to buy a K5000 because I thought it was going to be the best graphics card ever. We got to do it, guys. And then I like later realized, oh wait, I should have just bought two, cheaper gaming cards that would have performed at like 4 times, each with Octane. It was
because of CUDA.
Because of CUDA, yeah.
Well, in any other situation, you would have been right.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, I was playing with Houdini at the time, too, and it was, like, the, super fast and crazy. Like, you could, I was just messing around with, like, noise functions and all this, like, displacement type stuff, and everything was, like, moving at crazy frames per second. And so it's, like, the most compatible card, I think. The Quadros are just, like, have the best drivers, are the most compatible. But, yeah, for Octane specifically, not good, the worst bang for your buck possible.
But they're Apple supported in that Apple like certifies them or whatever.
Gotcha.
And says, okay, this is an Apple type, like this is made, NVIDIA makes it for Mac specifically. You're not kind of like hacking it the way that we do. And so we're messing with drivers, we're trying to figure out the experimental drivers and
and sorry to jump in, but yeah, like that actually might have been why I convinced my company to do that at the time, because the list of compatible cards was so small. This was like back in 2012, I think, and I was doing this big Dave Matthews Band music video, and switching to Octane like totally saved my ass on that. Like everything started to render so much faster, and that's when my crush began. But but yeah, like, but the list of compatible cards was so small that I thought the Quadro was one of my only options, basically.
Yeah, and what I thought was that one of because they have experimental drivers that are like not Apple certified, compared to the other ones, and they're all for all the cards, the GeForce and the Quadro, they're all the same driver, the web drivers. So I thought, okay, maybe that's it. And so, because our solution was to take the drive out and put it into a box. He had like not the toaster where you just pop the drive in the top, but like, what do you call it? Just the portable drive type box where you have to unscrew it, but you can take out the drive if you really have to and put another drive in.
Just like the housing or whatever, and you can. Yeah.
So we're going back and forth. We're putting it in there. We're trying the different drivers, and what we're doing is we're booting up, because that's just the solution. If you don't have a video card, you boot up on a laptop using target disk mode. So
gotcha.
you hold down the option key when you boot the Mac, and then it says, what drive do you want to boot off of? And you say this one, and it will boot that as if that's the computer instead of the internal drive, which is a really cool thing to have.
Totally.
But we would boot it, and everything was fine, and everything said it was running, and I'd be like, okay, well, I don't understand what to do. And then finally, I was like, okay, well, let's do this. Let's turn on screen sharing. And let's turn on the automatic login so it goes straight in, so we're sure that it's like not maybe a login screen is screwing something up or something. And we put it back in his system and we boot it up and we screen share to the tower. And I look up at the little thing in the top, and NVIDIA has this stupid thing where you can select OS X video drivers or NVIDIA, and because we had done all the install stuff on a regular Mac, it like defaulted to the regular driver, so it kept it wasn't loading the NVIDIA drivers. But because we were able to screen share into it, we could change it to NVIDIA, and it says, okay, we can do this, but you have to restart. And we're like, yeah, and we restart, and it finally comes up, and I'm like, oh, thank goodness.
Cool.
Because I had never had an issue ever in the 11 and then the 10 previous builds.
Right.
So we got it working, and we got Octane loaded, and the thing is like balling.
Sweet. That's awesome.
Super fast, and loving that. And
that sounds like a crazy, hacker solution that I would never come across or whatever. Like, I would not think to screen share to another computer, or I don't know. That just sounds like, tech god level to me. So good for you.
Oh, dude, I use screen sharing all the time.
Yeah. On my end of things, like I've got a big, PC rig with like 3 graphics cards that I built, and it's constantly in a state of, either, I mean, some weeks it's like doing pretty good, and other weeks it just decides to crap its pants. And lately it's been in I'm going to freeze every, 5 minutes into using me every single time. So the other day, like, we were going to have, like, I haven't really had, any big 3D projects lately, so I haven't really had much of a reason to, fix it yet or whatever. But the other day, man, we were playing some more Overwatch. I was like, all right, so I just went in there and like ripped out 2 graphics cards, and then it worked. So
that's funny.
It's just like one of those graphics cards I'm probably going to have to send back in. I burned through those things so quickly, but whatever.
And that's what we were talking about too, is that the ones that I had previously built with 970s in them, had like I had one 970 burn up, and I had another 970 burn up, and it has nothing to do with the hacked nature of it. Right. It's just that when you sit there and you run the thing at like top level, just like continuously churning and rendering and running those cores,
they're not really meant for that.
Yeah.
The gaming cards are not meant to be running at the highest, 90 to 95%,
for like weeks at a time without stopping.
Weeks on end. Yeah, we definitely abuse those cards for sure. But yeah, and the one I left in there was obviously the 980 Ti, because that's the one I trust the most. And I was right about that. So yeah.
Well, it seems like the 980 Ti's are less likely to burn out.
Yeah, they seem more stable.
Like, I've had a lot of 970s burn out, and knock on wood, the 980s have been pretty stable. Right. Haven't had any issues with them yet, and I mean, some,
Yeah, the nice thing though is that, like, even if they do burn out, you can send them in with an RMA. And like, by the time that goes out of warranty, isn't it like a 2-year warranty?
I think so.
Yeah, by the time it's out, like, we're going to have fully upgraded systems with new cards, right. So it's like, it's not a big deal at that point. So I think, I'm not too afraid of.
It's kind of like a cost of doing business.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, you got to deal with that. You're going to have that. It's like having tires on a car.
You use them.
You use them, and you're going to go through them, and you're going to have to change them up every now and then and get new ones and maintain them. So that's just part of the deal. You can't expect them to work forever.
For sure.
So you've got a note here on room scale VR.
Oh yeah, totally. So yeah, last week we were trying to figure out what that actually, what that meant. And so with the Oculus, right, it's got 2 forward facing cameras. Is that correct? Or is it just one?
Just one.
Okay. So the interesting thing with that is, so with the HTC Vive, you've got 2 laser, basically, like, rather than cameras, they've got these laser scanners, and you position them in the top corners of your room 180 degrees apart. So with the Oculus, so that's like, it's mostly about the tracking. So the room scale VR thing is like, you've got this defined, 6.5 by 5 foot space area to move around in, and it really never changes no matter what you do. And so with the Oculus, if you rotate, say, like, you're good as long as you're facing forward, but the second you rotate like more than 90 degrees, you run into the issue where one of your hands controllers can occlude the other one, right?
If you have hand controllers, which are not out yet.
Oh, sorry, right.
But it will, yes.
Right. So, right. Well, the headset almost never loses tracking now, right? Because it's got sensors all over that thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, but once you integrate those hand controllers, like, one can occlude the other one. So you run into this issue where it's like the camera is only seeing a certain field of view. And interestingly, I looked up this, what the Oculus people had to say about this, and I found this article where the CEO was like, well, we could do room scale VR, we just don't care that much about it yet, and the Vive is just more like, the systems aren't that different, it's just that the Vive is like really pushing this room scale VR experience, while the Oculus, isn't so much. So he's like, if we took our cameras, and had them at opposite ends of the room, where one's covering your back and one's covering your front, then it's not really that much of an issue anymore. It's just that, the Vive is like really that's their one of their big things, other than the hand controllers.
I'm still confused about that, because I don't understand wearing a headset and walking around a whole bunch, but
it feels so real. It's really fun. Like I that's what made it this kind of groundbreaking experience. The one time I tried it was like, you feel like you're literally walking around and using your whole body in this, really kinetic experience, versus just swiveling around in your chair. And, the Vive is really trying to get away from, like, rather than gamifying, VR and just being like a plus to your games or whatever, they're really trying to break away from that and make it like this, holodeck type experience.
Right.
They don't let you use a control stick to move yourself around, mostly because that will cause more VR sickness.
Right.
And like, that's not necessarily how they want you to be able to control yourself or whatever.
But you can do, I move around with the Oculus. Like, there's some games that say this is best if you sit on the floor,
right,
or stand up, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think the big difference right now is just the precision of tracking, because like with those hand controllers, they just track 100% perfectly. The Vive has even more sensors on the head, and like they make use of like this box that they put you in where you can actually interact with the floor. Like, you could lie down on the floor, it will just,
right.
There's no situation where it'll lose tracking.
Right.
And you also get this like kind of bounding box that pops up where you get too close to a wall, and this red outline pops up where, so that it's very like, the Oculus doesn't have that kind of box thing where
it will do that if you get too far in certain areas. It will do a box.
Oh, okay, cool.
But I don't think it's based on the room. I think it's just based on the tracking itself.
Right. So they try to make exactly. So the room that you're in, basically, they try to correspond exactly with the virtual room, which makes for a really interesting experience.
I wonder if the hand controls that come with the new Oculus, the ones that are going to come out, if they'll have like an extra sensor.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure they do have more sensors. They've got to have sensors as well to be able to track the position and rotation and all that, right?
Yeah, and I think they're going to work with the main sensor already. I think, but maybe they'll come with like a separate sensor. Maybe you put it behind you or something. Because this is the same problem that came up when people were trying to do like motion tracking with the Kinect camera for the Xbox, because if you could use it and it would see an outline of your body,
right,
and you could do motion capture that way. But the problem was if somebody turns,
right,
and
the tracking can slip off.
Yeah, it slips off. So the solution to that was to use like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 connects together,
right, exactly,
and put them around you so you could see the hands at all times.
Right, and so that's kind of what the Vive is doing by positioning those two laser scanning devices in opposite, corners of the room. And I think it just really boils down to accuracy and speed of tracking. Like it never slipped off the entire time I was using it or whatever.
Yeah.
Even when I was like flailing about and spinning in circles and stuff,
Yeah. And I'd like to see the difference. I would like to look at one of those and see.
Yeah, man.
I mean, I don't have any problems now with losing tracking, either. So I'm trying to figure out, like, is it worth the trouble? For me, it seems like I have to go up in the corners of the room and like mount something up there. It just seems like a lot of trouble. But
yeah, it's definitely more trouble, but if you're investing that much into this geeked out, experience, it's definitely fun.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I'm sure they're both really great systems, and some people like, the Oculus better, and I would definitely love to try the Oculus as well. I watched this super, super interesting talk that we can include in the show notes from, the VR game I was telling you about last week, the job simulator one.
Yeah.
So the guys that made that, have this like hour-long presentation, which totally blew my mind and showed me like how much more than you would expect they put into designing that game. For instance, like, let's see, what did I write down here? Because it's like room scale and you're walking around, right? They've got this robot character. And what do you do if you've got like a kid, right, who's really short, and you want to talk to this robot character? Well, they actually have him, adjust with your height, and like, so he's like one character that just, if you like squat down and then go up, he'll like follow you so that you like empathize with him more, right? So that's one interesting thing. And then like, they really emphasize like floor level interaction, where like you can chuck something on the floor and then you actually like have to reach all the way down to the floor to pick it up.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. And like when I was playing, like you would open up cabinets and then grab stuff underneath the cabinets. And then another interesting thing, like people would get so convinced that like the VR world was real. Like if there was a table there, sorry, I'm a little under the weather right now too. But if you've got a table there, like one of these game designers that they're working with for years or whatever was like, great job, guys, and like took the controllers and just dropped them, right? Because he thought that there was really a table in front of him, right?
Oh gosh.
He gets so convinced. And that's like funny. People will walk up to the table, but almost never, like, you don't have to put like invisible walls in VR anymore, because people will have this natural aversion to passing through solid objects.
Right.
And I didn't even think about that when I was doing this VR experience or whatever. It's like, you don't walk through the thing because you think it's going to be solid, right? Your brain just tricks you, and you have to like think hard about, I need to walk through this object. It's like the thing I was saying with the balloon, where you're like holding it and it passes through where your body should be, and I just feel like this phantom weird nauseous feeling, right? But yeah, and so another crazy thing is like, how do you deal with like interacting, like picking up objects, right? That sounds like a simple thing, but like, your hand may not be in the same orientation as the object. And so one solution is the object, like if it's not positioned properly, would just like kind of magnetize and fly into your hand and like kind of thunk, like in the proper orientation. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
But the thing they invented, which like 90% of players never even noticed this happening, and I didn't notice, so this was kind of mind-blowing to me too, is that when you pick up an object, your hand just disappears. So like you would think that it's kind of like a cut. You would think that this would like confuse you, but instead you're like focusing on this object so hard that you've grabbed that you never even notice that your hand just disappears. So like they like does that make any sense? Or like,
yeah, it makes sense, but I'd have to see it to understand how it feels natural.
So definitely check out this presentation. But like, it feels natural because now you're focused just on whatever it is you've picked up, and then the second you let go, your hand returns immediately. So like, if you watch like the demo of this game, you'll see the hands just blinking on and off constantly. But that's because like it's almost like this feedback thing that you've picked this thing up, and now it doesn't really, you can focus on the object, and it doesn't matter how your hand and the object are oriented. Like the other solution I think is more clunky, where like the object has to like rotate itself and like magnetize your hand. Is just weird.
Who makes the game? Is it an independent company, or
it's an independent company? Yeah, let's see what.
Because I'm curious if they're going to try and come out with the Oculus version whenever the hand things come out. Because I'd love to try it, but it's like I don't want to have to buy another VR headset.
Yeah, totally. So their company's name is Alchemy, like owl is in the bird, chemi is in chemistry, labs, so Alchemy Labs. yeah, it was just such a fascinating presentation. And like another thing, like how do you deal with collisions, right? So like, because this is something that I didn't even think about. Like you pick up an object and then you want to bang it on the table and you expect it to go and hit the table, but at the same time there's nothing preventing your hand from moving through that table, right?
Right.
So one option is your hand and object both collide with the table, but then your real hand in the real world keeps going. So that feels weird because now you've got a dissociation between your real hand and the VR hand. Yeah. So you don't want that. You really don't. You want to keep, they focused on keeping this quote unquote hand presence where like your hands are always, you know, where they're always in the exact 3D location that your real hands are. So the thing they invented was, you know, rather than the object in your hand going through the table, what happens is only your hand goes through the table. So your hand stays in the same position, but the object itself collides.
Yeah,
right?
That makes sense.
So it makes sense.
Does it vibrate too?
It vibrates, exactly. So if your hand passes through something, then you get this haptic, you know, feedback. Right. Same thing if you're like pulling a bow and arrow back or whatever, like it goes like click, 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 click. And then when you reach the end, you get this big vibrate. So like there are all these interesting little subtle things that give you this feedback. And then the other thing that they said for hand presence is imagine just pulling open a drawer, right? And the drawer can only open, you know, towards you. It can only go in one dimension. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. But maybe you actually pull it at a diagonal.
Yeah.
Right. So then that would, in that case, you know, you wouldn't want your, like that would break the hand presence. And actually, let me look. I had this written down because I forget what they actually did in this case. Let's see. Pulling out a drawer would decay your hand presence. But yeah, so I don't remember actually how they solved that, so I fail at this part.
But it's probably kind of the same thing, right? Like
yeah, it's like your hand stays. I think that they don't actually have the hand necessarily locked to the drawer. Like the drawer pulls out in the axis that it should, you know, perfectly horizontally. But if you bring your hand up, I think that's what it is. In that case, your hand disappears too. So you don't actually see the hand, and so you don't have to worry about the hand presence in that case. Because it would also be weird to see like the hand no longer contacting the drawer and like lifting up diagonally. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I like totally kind of geeked out on this stuff, and like, you know, there are all these new interesting ways to like, you know, redirect the player. Like if you've got these, you know, rumbling controllers, you know, if like you could have a cell phone vibrate and then like your controller vibrates and then you lift it up, you know, so that could like, you know, be a way to divert the player's attention. There's just so many interesting kind of new opportunities to, you know, tell stories in this medium. So yeah, I found it really exciting.
And you know, the video that you sent for the show notes last week, kind of the augmented reality nightmare.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I've been thinking,
did you check that out?
Yeah, and you know, I've been thinking more and more about it, and Pokemon is a really good example of that. Because you know, everybody's like, VR is not going to catch on. VR is not going to catch on.
Oh, it's catching on,
and it's catching on, but it's not catching on in mass because you still have to have some good hardware to run it. You've still got to have, even if you want it on a phone, you know, it's got to be kind of dumbed down for the phone, and you still have to have something on your head. You have to stop and do that. But you know, I'm thinking down the line at like where it's going to be. There's going to be VR or whatever, but AR is really going to be the future.
Yeah, for sure.
Really going to be the future because think about this Pokemon craze. Yeah. Like people go out and because they can play these games out in public and see them on their phone. Just I mean, that's nothing compared to when we get a really good AR headset out there that is linked to your phone somehow, and it's pulling in all the data, and it has its own graphics card, and it's mapping everything to everywhere, and you're playing games.
So interesting to just even for thinking about the real world to like think of the data that we'll now have access to. Like I go on a walk every day, and I don't know what kind of species of trees I'm looking at. I don't know. You know, there's so much like opportunity in your life for more information, you know, and like that information could just be presented to you as an overlay, you know?
Yeah.
So that's, it's crazy.
But you're going to have the same pushback. You're going to have skeptical curmudgeons. You're going to have, in my day, we didn't have to wear these glasses all the time. We used a cell phone.
Right. But who cares about those people? Because everybody's going to be doing it.
And there's going to have to be laws made, like you can't wear AR glasses while you're driving.
Right.
You know, or maybe you have to have a special driving mode that helps.
That helps you. Yeah. Like it could actually aid in, you know, like if we've got cameras all over our car, you know, and we're seeing from multicam.
Yeah, imagine that. Like it gets rid of your blind spot for you automatically.
Exactly.
It remaps your blind spot so that you look behind you and you see road reprojected from a camera that's on the side of the car.
Totally.
I mean, that's awesome. But it might have to have a mode, like you can't play games while you're driving, you know, like there's going to be, it's just going to be crazy. I mean, assuming we don't kill each other first.
Right.
That's going to be the
we
next
may have
level.
Self-driving cars before that happens, but maybe not. I mean, I feel like the VR thing is a lot closer.
It's very close.
And, you know, actually the Pokemon Go thing, like I just saw, there's another VR device called the HoloLens, which is a big one. And that is an
Microsoft,
AR. Yeah. And so like there's now apparently Pokemon Go on the HoloLens.
But the thing's like $5,000 and it's developers only.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but that's on the horizon.
But there's that other one everybody's talking about. That's not out yet. That's supposed to be crazy. And I should have written this down because
it's okay. You've got an excuse. You have pneumonia.
Was it
it's a pretty serious
who was
thing.
It that went to go see it last week? Oh man, I can't remember. Maybe I saw it on Twitter. Was it Ash Thorpe that got a preview of it? And
Probably.
they had a video.
That jerk is, you know, he's like with everybody cool, hanging out with people, and you know, he's just got access to all the cool toys.
I don't know if it was Ash Thorpe or if it was Beeple who got a preview of the thing. And it's one of those things that's been either a Kickstarter or a you know, something like that for a while, and it's just gotten all this hype, and it's super like top secret. Like nobody has really seen it yet in real life except for a few people. Ah man, I'm trying to remember if I can. Maybe it was Beeple.
Remember.
And I'm pretty sure. Well, who's the one that cusses all the time?
Beeple.
Maybe it was Beeple who saw it. It's some video I saw on some social media site, so it's like so hard to remember.
Ash Thorpe is like the Zen hippie dude. He's like, yeah, everything's just, I don't know.
Well, he wasn't.
To me, he is, but you know, Beeple's the.
He wasn't in the video. That's why I don't remember. Okay, it was. Okay, Magic Leap is what it's called.
Okay.
This is supposed to be ridiculous, and I'm gonna put this down in the show notes because Magic Leap. It said we snuck a mic into the lab when Beeple came for this first visit. Spoiler: he really liked the clouds, and
what the F?
Yeah, did you find it?
Yeah, their intro video is some kind of whale jumping through
it's crazy.
Basketball court, but it's just some pre-rendered, you know, thing. I don't know, like. This is cool hype stuff. Like Pokemon, you saw the release trailer, like they hyped the crap out of it, like what it could become, you know, with like everybody going to battle Mewtwo in Times Square and like, you know, seeing real Pokemon everywhere and like, you know.
Which, by the way, did you see the rare Pokemon in New York and like the hundreds of people flocking to it? That's insane.
Gyarados and like Justin Bieber was there.
Oh my gosh, that's so ridiculous. So it was, I'm sure it's like super... he probably had to sign like a bunch of things not to talk about it. So, but
so it was Beeple.
Yeah, because they don't even show. They don't. I mean, they don't. All they show is the like weird. I don't know, like glittery things rolling around. It doesn't show the device. It doesn't show it on his head. Like, it doesn't show anything. This is like
some hype stuff that's pre-rendered and looks cool, but
but it
doesn't really tell you anything.
It's real though. Like they have it built, and they're talking about possibly showing it off in January 2017 if it's ready.
Okay.
And this is something. I mean, I've been hearing hype about this for so long, but it's the same type of deal. It's AR just like Microsoft's version of it. And this one, I don't know, this one seems like it might be better.
Cool.
Just based on what I've seen. Or it could be hype. I don't know.
Right.
So we'll have to, I don't know, we'll have to, I guess, wait and see.
Right, totally.
But man, I mean, it's just going to be the future. It's going to be advertising. It's going to be games. It's going to be all motion graphics. You know, like your motion graphics and everything are going to stop being in that 16:9 area.
Absolutely.
It's going to be all sorts of weird sizes, and it's just going to be insane. It's going to take off.
Yeah, I feel like I need to hop on this train finally and start learning more about it, and you know, start trying to develop content for VR, because it's going to happen, and that's, I don't want to lose my gerb.
Right.
You know,
I'm going to have to get on the Unreal Engine train. Bandwagon.
Yeah, one of my friends in DC, Jate, has been on that bandwagon, but he's been running into roadblocks because, you know, at surface level, it looks like it's really user friendly, like Cinema 4D, and it's easy to make content and, you know, make a level really fast and play it. But then the second you start diving deeper, it becomes pretty hardcore code.
Yes,
you know,
that's the part I don't like.
Yeah, I really don't want to have to learn to program. And then, you know, he's also just been having issues where, like, he just wishes he could export, you know, like a sequence, an animated, you know, baked any kind of animation, but it doesn't really support that yet. Like Alembic, it doesn't quite support it yet. So it's like really difficult to get animation from Cinema into Unreal, but apparently that update is coming where, you know, you would be able to just make a really cool animation and then, you know, get it into your game or whatever.
It'll get there though.
Yeah,
it'll get there. And hopefully they'll make it easier and easier as far as the code stuff is concerned.
For sure.
You know, if they could make stuff nodal based or kind of more like Espresso or something.
Right.
I know, where you can figure stuff out that way and not have to do a lot of programming. That would be great.
For sure.
So, well, that's the week wrap up.
Yeah.
It's more than I thought we'd have to talk about.
That's true. Yeah, we're already at like almost an hour.
So one of our topics before we get to all the questions for this week is, we were going to talk about this last week and we moved it because we went over, is fonts.
Oh, yeah. You didn't want to talk about this, but I'm like, no, bro, I've got some minorly cool font stuff to talk about. It's not actually that exciting. So what were you going to say about fonts?
Well, the big thing about fonts with me is that I didn't quite understand fonts when I first started out because I did not have the design background, right? I came from video, got into 3D, like 3D, not motion graphics, just 3D
same
stuff.
Here.
And then into motion graphics. And once I get into motion graphics, I'm just grabbing whatever font, you know, not even thinking about it. I don't know the difference between a serif and a sans serif. And I'm, you know, it's one of those things where, like, it makes a big difference and you kind of learn after a while what makes a font work or not work in a certain situation.
Yeah, I still kind of suck at fonts. No, I still really suck at fonts. Like, the people that are, I don't have that design background either. Like, everything is just, you know, self-taught for me and just whatever I'm interested in. And fonts kind of just seem boring. I'm like, that one kind of looks cool, you know? But it is really good to learn that stuff.
Just choose Gotham. It's all good.
Yeah, Gotham's a good one. That's all I know. Nick Campbell taught me that.
Just always pick Gotham. You're good.
Pick Gotham. And yeah, actually, I have some more cheat codes for fonts from Ash Thorpe. He kind of, I was, you know, a few months ago watching his UI and data design development course at Learn Squared, and he like basically went through his favorite fonts, which he always picks ones that, you know, if you go to like DaFont or whatever, these crappy sites, you know, they're just not designed nearly as well, and he picks ones that specifically, you know, will lock to a grid. So he'll like work in Illustrator with a grid where everything is perfect and, you know, mathematically correct.
Golden ratio.
Golden ratio. But just, you know, you just want a font that will, especially if you're doing this futuristic stuff, that will, you know, when you lay a grid over it, will have lines that are continuous, you know, in multiple points of the font. And I forget all these, you know, the terms for, I'm not that much of a nerd, you know, for the different descender and ascender. Okay, there you go. I do know some of the terms. But you want to have like a line that will, for each character, match. So his favorite ones are, there's one called Blender, there's one called Regular, there's T-Star Mono, there's one called Gridnik with a K, like it's German, there's one called Din, as in like dinner but shorter, and then there's Avenir. So there's your cheat codes. Look up those fonts, they're all pretty sweet
Avenir,
looking.
I use that a lot.
Yeah,
because
cool.
I have a lot of clients that use that, give that to me as their font to use.
Then you must be doing it right. Yeah. If you're like a super font geek, then you can just like my friend fancies himself like he can just like look at a font and identify it. He's like,
right.
I think it's Babes Neue, or whatever.
Right.
I'm like, whatever, dude. Is that really helping you?
Proxima Nova, Copperplate,
exactly.
Name them all off.
Do you use whatthefont.com?
Oh man, I use it all the time.
Yeah. So for those of you listening that don't know, that's where you can just take a screenshot of your font and then you upload the image to this site and it'll give you its best guesses for what that font is. And usually it gets it pretty dang close. And yeah.
Or a similar free font that you could use that's so close that it doesn't matter.
Totally.
The thing about using What the Font is you have to know how to use it. Mm-hmm. There's like a couple things about it. Number one, you can't take something with a busy background and screenshot it and put it in and have it find it. Like the best thing to do is to go in and clean it up in Photoshop first, which sounds ridiculous, but
right. No, that does make sense.
It works. Like just take it in, make it a very simple black and white, cut it out, even trace it the best you can or something. The other thing is once you do that, and you need to make it big as you can. If you do one real small, it's going to have a hard time. But
don't give it no junky compression.
Yeah, that too. And if you bring it in, sometimes it will separate pieces. Like, say you have the letter I, and it separates, and it's a lowercase I, and it separates the stem from the dot or whatever.
Right.
And then, like, you can actually take in What the Font and drag the one onto the other, and it will combine them. Because like after you put it in, it brings up every single individual letter and it says, I think this is an A, I think this is a B, I think this is a C. Well, we'll get to an I and you'll have the dot and it will say, I don't know what this is. And then you'll have the line, the stem or whatever you call, I don't know what you call it, the bottom part of the I, and they'll be separate. And you're like, well, I don't know which one to call it because neither of those is the full I. You take the one and you drag it into the other and it actually combines them. And then it'll say, okay, these are together. Yeah, that's a really good thing.
That's awesome. So you just taught me something about it. So obviously I'm not the pro on this, but that's great.
Well, it doesn't say, but...
Yeah. So in the online app, you do this, is what you're saying.
Yeah, you drag the two together and then it has the full I. And then you say, okay, this is a lowercase I.
Right.
And that has made a big difference for me being able to combine those pieces because it'll come up and it might not know what a font is until I do that combo.
Right. Cool.
So
well, that's a great tip. Let's see. So my last note on fonts was there's this crazy game called Typewriter. So it's type:\writer. And it's like every level that you go to in the game is a world of different fonts. So like you should check out the trailer. We'll put it in the show notes. It's like, it kind of looks like the game Limbo where it's like dark and, you're just these little balls rolling around and stuff. Or I think. Yeah. I'm watching the trailer now. So it's like all moody and atmospheric and it's called Typewriter, a typographic video game. So if you want to just like be the nerdiest nerd, you can play this game. But it actually kind of looks cool. I actually kind of want to play it.
There's
so you can like increase your font knowledge as you play a video game. So it's like doing research,
Well, there's a lot more that I need to learn about fonts, but the one thing is that I definitely recognize a lot more fonts now than I did before. When I built hundreds and hundreds of logos at this point, and that's really what kind of pushed me in that direction. But there's things like mixing serifs and sans serifs is pretty much a no-no most of the time. Sure. It just depends on the situation, but most of the time you don't want to mix. There's kind of unwritten rules about how many different types of fonts you use in something. usually you don't want more than like 2 fonts, and very rarely like 3 you could get away with, but mostly 2. A good rule of practice sometimes is to not even have 2 fonts, but to have like maybe like one version of a font. Like if you're using Gotham Black for the main headings, and then using
right. A lighter version or whatever for
a thin or a condensed for something else. And
I definitely agree with that. Getting a really good font with, all of the various, I guess, families. Is that what you call it? I mean, there's like light, book, I don't know. Yeah. Bold, black, yada, yada. And then, using a combination of those to create different looks within your piece. Yeah.
And there's so much you can learn about it. I have a book. Let's see if I can find it real quick here.
Go for it.
I don't know if it's up there or not. I had a good font book at one point. It talks about all sorts of fonts. And I don't know. It's just good to learn about that stuff because and especially when you're doing 3D, there's a lot of stuff that will look really good if you're doing print or something. But if you're going to do 3D, like there are a lot of fonts that don't work with 3D.
Yeah. You got to totally change things around because it's got to be a lot cleaner. When you try to extrude weird fonts with textures and stuff, that's just never going to work. It's going to look horrible.
Just weird, rigid edge, like odd edges, like rough edges.
Yeah. If you want your 3D stuff to look good, you really have to approach it from a different kind of design standpoint where like if you're doing those kind of chiseled bevels, like you want that look, you've got to go and model that stuff and like, find your center line through the font and then, extrude just that. And, there are like a lot of techniques for making fonts look a lot better and kind of creating your own custom 3D type,
And one of the things that makes Gotham a little more okay to use a lot, like if you don't have an, I don't know, if you don't have a customer or a client coming to you and asking for something specific, like a lot of times I'll get someone who doesn't have a logo at all, and they're just like, just write our name right there. It's like, okay. Right. And sometimes, less now than I used to, but sometimes I'll use Gotham just because, it's generic. And you can get away with it a little bit more only because it's not as recognizable as a font.
Gotcha.
Not because, it's overused. Like, Gotham is just as overused as Papyrus and Comic Sans.
Yeah.
The difference is your average person doesn't realize that it's an overused font. Like even people who are like, "Oh, I use Comic Sans in my Word document for the sign on the church bulletin board because I think it's cute." Or use Papyrus because it looks, cute. They're not going to pick Gotham for that same reason. So even your uneducated person is going to recognize Papyrus and Comic Sans.
Right, because it's got you're saying it has distinct characteristics, whereas Gotham, it's clean, but also beautiful. Something along the lines of Helvetica, but more like modern.
Right. And so people aren't going to recognize it as an overused font as much.
Right.
Because it's just normal. It's just it's just letters. That's, to me, it's just one of the most normal looking, just generic looking fonts that you could have. And I guess Helvetica, Arial fall into that same category. Yeah. They're very normal.
One font I never use anymore that I used to when I was a noob was Impact.
Oh yeah, Impact. I used to use that.
That's
a lot.
Like right up there with Papyrus and
But Impact still comes up. I think I used Impact this week because a client had a logo that had like one little thing in it that was in Impact, and I was like, well,
I'm judging you for using that.
Well, it's their logo, not mine. So.
Oh, right, I get you. Yeah, you're like, not on me.
Yeah, I was actually like, do I still have Impact after all these years? But I used to have my company logo like 15 years ago was in Impact.
It's because it's so big, man. It looks so cool. So macho.
And at the time, I might have had to buy it. That's the thing. Even Papyrus, I found Papyrus before Papyrus was overused.
Right.
So...
that was one of the first ones I used too. I was like, oh, it's so cool. It's got this paper texture.
Yeah.
Papyrus.
And that's fine if no one's used it before, but geez.
Right. Yeah.
It's like the old podcast I used to do, we had 2 or 3 logos throughout its lifetime. But in '05, when I made the first logo, Papyrus wasn't anywhere.
Yeah, I get you.
But, that's not something, looking back on it now, that's not something you can really extrude.
'05 might have been exactly when I used it, when I was first, like, starting to dabble around, Yeah.
So, yeah, fonts.
My last note about fonts, I think I said this last week, but there is a documentary that I've only seen half of, and I intend to watch the rest of it, called Helvetica.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just about that font and like what went into it, and it'll give you a really good appreciation and more of a knowledge of what those genius Germans did and do. Like how they used to have to cast it into metal, and I really know nothing about the physical process, but it's definitely really fun and interesting to watch, just like the detail and technique that went into it, and all the thought.
We do like drone stuff, but we kind of market it under a different name for our drone aerial photography.
Oh, cool.
And so we have a website, and it's called aerialbold.com.
Nice.
But it's spelled
that's clever.
Like aerials, like aerial footage aerial, not like the font.
Yeah.
But
I get you. Just
to make people cringe, the logo Arial Bold is not in Arial.
Not in Arial? Good job, dude. It's referring to Arial Bold, the font, but, nothing about it is actually Arial. That's funny.
Yeah. I don't even know if that site's up yet. I was working on it, and I came upon 8 million other things to do, but I was like, some person is going to notice that and cringe, and I'm doing it just to make them cringe.
Yeah, you did it. Good job. All right, so what are we talking about next here?
Oh, now we should just Q&As.
Yeah, we need to start jumping in and answering all these wonderful questions from Sage and from Andrew Garber there. I just learned that that's you, Andrew, on on Reddit.
We got some other ones here, too. It looks like we have a lot of stuff. We don't have as much as it looks like in here. I'm just not up to organizing my notes as much this week because I feel like...
Oh, me neither. Yeah.
Boo-boo.
Today is this sleepy week. It's like the... and sick.
All right, so let's go to the questions. What's the worst piece you ever had to hand over to a client? What's the story behind it? And how do you deal with / feel about client interference like this?
Mm-hmm. Do you want to take this one first, or should I?
Do you have an answer?
So I don't have the best answer.
I should have thought about this ahead of time.
I have not actually had too much trouble. I feel like a lot of the time, there have been jobs like that I know, it's like usually I know from the get-go that it's going to look crap. It's going to, like, there was a Virginia lottery job that I did where I had to make, I did like a campaign of 50 videos in like 3 weeks.
Oh,
so 50. Yeah. So it's like when you've got that kind of bulk, there's no way that you're going to reach an amazing level of quality.
Right.
But it's like it ends up being good for what it is kind of thing. And a lot of the time I'm dealing with like footage. So it's like if someone shot it stupid, then it's not going to look very good. Right. But that's not really on
can't polish
me,
a turd.
That's not really, can't polish a turd. Yeah. And I mean, I try as hard as I can to polish turds, but and make it as good as it can be. In every job. But I mean, for this, it was like, I jammed through the editing. I did like 3 full-length music videos and like, 3 30-second spots and a 60-second spot. There were like 15 acoustic music videos. There were a ton of interviews. So it was like this massive content. But I tried to touch everything in DaVinci Resolve, color grade it. I was editing like mad. I had my friend editing as well. And then I had another friend doing just the motion graphics. So I didn't even touch the motion graphics on this one. And, it came out okay. It was like lived on this site and, it was the most lucrative job I've ever done. So like that one was a moneymaker and, didn't look fantastic, but it looked good. When I was in my previous job, towards the end, there were some frustrating times where I would make something in Sketch and Tune or whatever that I thought looked really cool, like trying these new cartoon styles, and they just didn't think it fit with the band's image, so it just didn't get used. There have been several times where like I felt kind of subverted by my own, coworkers versus like the client. But when I go in with a client, there haven't been a whole lot of times where it's like, they just love Comic Sans or whatever, or their taste is horrible. I mean, a lot of the time it'll be like, I make something with my own creative ideas and then show it to them, and they're like, holy crap, that's really cool. Like, there was this one job where I think he was expecting me to do like a 2D type of ad, and I ended up, my rough was this all element 3D. This was like a few years ago, so I was using that a ton. And so it was like these, it was this kind of Red Bull-esque ad with spinning cans and stuff, but it was all in 3D. And he was like, wow, this is like, completely not what I gave you as a brief and not what I was expecting, but I love it. So like that, and I mean, the more pro you get, the more that stuff is going to kind of get locked down to begin with. And there's maybe not going to be as much creative freedom. Like, you'll have storyboards, and you're going to, the art will be the first thing to get locked, and so you'll kind of know what to expect. Yeah, I mean, on this Zika job that we just did, there are always these like little technical things, like we had these nice looking cartoony mosquitoes in there that our illustrator artist had designed, and they fit in really nicely with the whole piece.
And the color scheme.
The color scheme, it worked. And at the end, the client was like, why didn't they're supposed to match the real mosquitoes. The real mosquitoes are Asian tiger mosquitoes, and they're black and white, and they got these spots on them. And it's like, this is a cartoon depiction. Nothing in here represents reality. And so, we had to go back and make them look black and white and with weird spots on them, and it didn't fit the design language.
No, they blended into the scene too much at that point. They didn't pop out anymore. I hate using the word pop, but they did not stand out in front of...
Not just that, but like, before we had all of these kind of nice like pastel colors and just vibrant colors, and like these things are just black. Like it looks like the plague has ridden our commercial at this point, So that was not one I was very fond of. But, a lot of that is just like over taking something too seriously or too, like... It's not that the client is a freaking moron and can't, respect good animation and design and stuff. It's just that they've got this other, criterion or whatever.
Or their clients telling them something, or you never know.
Exactly. Like, yeah. There's bureaucracy, and there's
red
hierarchy
tape and the whole thing's like, who is going to watch that commercial and be like, wait a minute, I didn't realize that Zika mosquitoes were pastel green. No one's going to say that. Just like birds don't actually have skeptical eyes, like in a Family Guy show, where the horses with skeptical eyes.
Yeah, exactly.
I made that bird.
Exactly. They could have started ripping apart the bird. It's like, hey, that bird's got a weird expression on. A real bird would never
look like that. Yeah, skeptical bird is skeptical.
Skeptical bird is skeptical.
So,
I had another small thing to say about that. Like, a lot of my jobs like are just kind of VFX and then like removals. So it's like, in that case, there's no vision. It's just a technical task. Like, did you remove the thing? Yep, I did. Okay, good job. Here's the money. So like a lot of the time it's like that. And then other times, it feels like I'm just getting into the director's headspace, and I like respect the decisions that they're making. They're not necessarily the decisions that I would make, but I don't think that they're a freaking moron. Like, one of the first feature films I worked on, the guy really loves like this old school, like very contrasty film look. And so I was doing the color grade with him, and he really wanted to push, like, make it super crunchy on everything. And it went pretty well with the vibe of this movie, which was this, like, it was actually Boyd Tinsley's movie called Faces in the Mirror. He's the violinist from Dave Matthews Band. And so it's almost like this, hour to hour and a half long music video. It's very unlike any other movie you would see. It's more of like this weird experience, and it's very trippy. And so this contrasty look, with really saturated colors and sometimes just really grungy, worked really well for it. And so I was kind of following his lead for that art direction. And that was great. Other things I'll grade really flat and, milky, and, it just depends on what the director's vision is, and I try to get into that headspace and then just kind of go along with it and create in that container or in that context, So I haven't had a ton of experiences where, a client just pulled something on me that was absolutely crazy, and I was like, I cannot believe you're making this horrendous decision. You've just crapped all over my work and I hate you. The only time I ever felt like that, I think I mentioned last week, was like when we would design the touring visuals for Dave Matthews Band. There's this one guy that was kind of like the end of the line, end of the pipe, and he would, he was like from the 80s or something, but he would very frequently like be like, this needs more grunge, and like just put this, slap a texture over the whole thing so you couldn't even see the work. Or, this one needs to be yellow, this one needs to be green, and just like tint the whole thing. Not like a subtle green grade, it was like nasty green. Like you take a green solid and you lay it over top, because the hippo couldn't do very complex things, and so he was working with these like old tools trying to fix up our After Effects and like stuff that we'd poured. You'd see something you poured 40 hours into die in a couple of minutes, and so that was very heartbreaking and frustrating.
That's pre-Pandora. That's before
exactly
Kulux, and
they're still using that system. They're not even using Pandora.
Oh geez.
But yeah, so like that was some of the most frustrating, I think. Yeah.
Well, I had a similar thing. This isn't my main answer to this, but I had a deal where it was the same thing. It was like that grunge thing. Like people who can't get away from that grunge because they feel like that's their audience.
Right.
And so that's the deal with, if you've heard of the band Third Day.
I haven't.
Third Day is a Christian band. But they are very, very 90s. They are a 90s Christian band, and they're still out there touring. So they haven't strayed away from that image.
They're still in the 90s.
Yeah. It's very, everything they do is grunge. And we had somebody come to us who wanted something on the cheap, and we were going to do this thing with Hearts and Mograph, and it was going to be easy because we were using Mograph. Right. And we presented the idea to them. They liked the idea. We sent them screenshots. We had an approval process that we went through, and we got the approvals every step of the way. Then it got to the end, and the person who really should have been seeing it hadn't seen it. So that's why, and that was frustrating because then by the time we got to the end, they were like, we can't use this. It's not grungy enough. It doesn't match. I'm like, well, I'm sorry, but we did the work and went through the approval process, and we have a contract. You got to pay for this now. I'm sorry you didn't show it to the right guy. It says in the contract that you need to be showing this to the right people at these stages of the process, and you didn't. So that kind of sucked. It's like you could have caught that, and we could have changed the direction before we went off,
So that's, even then though, it's like, it's more of an issue of communication than it is of, it's like the person who should be the creative director is not doing that, Yeah, and that can be incredibly frustrating is when a message doesn't get passed up the chain of command high enough, and then, like you think you're on the track towards making what they want, and you're on brief, and then at the very end you realize, oh, wait, no, they don't want this at all. This is not the style. Yeah, and,
a couple other examples. I had a guy who was very into, it's a bowling glove. He's a really good client of mine, a really nice guy from way back. He found my stuff on the internet, and he was coming to Arlington to do some test trials of his new bowling glove because the National Bowling Center is here. And everything that he found on the internet that he liked was all this super like Andrew Kramer type stuff, and a lot of it was Andrew Kramer. It was a lot of Video Copilot stuff and whatnot. And so he had never heard of the guy before. This was his first time looking for these types of effects. So he was finding like all the cinematic, epic looking things, and he wanted all of these things in the video. So the music is crazy, and it's so epic, and it's like all of these generic like Andrew Kramer tutorial type things that he said he specifically wanted. So I'm sitting there just doing tutorial stuff for him, because he wants it. And in the end, it was just this over the top video for a cloth glove that you wear.
Gotcha.
You know,
That's bizarre.
and that it's like something I didn't really have pushback. I couldn't push back on because it's like he's pretty set. He wants these 10 different videos to be his video that he found on the internet. There's no getting around that. I could suggest it, but he was like dead set on it.
Right.
The other example about client interference, working on the holiday videos that we've done for a couple years.
Oh yeah, those things are so cool.
But we don't get much pushback on them. You know, we trying to be the Otis, to be, you know, obviously trained in skill set. We try to say, look, take our word for it. You want to do it this way because this is going to fit your budget and it's going to work well and this looks best visually. But then we would get pushback either from the client or the client's friend who is a print person who works with her on a regular basis, who would say, well, we need to take this one thing out. And it would be something like super important that really needed to be in there. For example, the one from last year, we really liked it because you go into this train world and like into a train set and the train's moving around. And at the end, you kind of zoom out and the kid's playing with the train. Now, in the video at the end, what we wanted to do was you're going through the little magical world and the houses and all the people, and at the end, you see this giant hand come into the frame and pick the train up off the track. And when it does that, you quickly do a snap zoom out, and you're in the scene with the kid in front of the fireplace playing with his train set, and it ties it together. Because that's how it works. It like lets the viewer know, oh, you were inside the train set the whole time.
Yeah, and it's like it adds this extra dimension of like it's this kid's imagination, and you know it's a more sentimental kind of thing.
Yeah, so we had it in there, and at the last second they said we want to take it out. This giant hand, we don't think people will understand what that means. And I'm like, I'm telling you, like if you take it out, then you don't understand. So what we had to do in the end is that we had to just snap zoom out from the train and just be on the train in the room, but it didn't have the same impact. I thought that would have been a great thing to have in there, and that's when that would have been cool. They wouldn't budge on it. The one that they did budge on was that we had spent a ton of time on the flight of the bird at the very beginning, doing its flying and stuff, and to get the shot at the beginning above the scene, and then to get it to go all the way down to ground level. The thing has to kind of dive to get down there in a good amount of time. And we got major pushback like, oh, a dove wouldn't do a nosedive. It looks like he's dive bombing.
Too much over literal.
Right. It's overanalyzation. And I was like, look, I'm really adamant about this. I gave him a couple options. I showed him what it would look like the other way. I'm like, look, I know that you think it's a dive bomb, but it's not a dive bomb. If you want to show this beautiful scene and show him like go down, it's a very smooth transition. It works really well in the scene. We've spent a lot of time on it already, and I really feel like we need to go with this. And finally they said, okay. Cool. You know, we came to kind of an agreement. I pulled it back just a little bit, but if I would have done it another way, it just wouldn't have had the impact. It wouldn't have looked as cool.
Right. I guess you could have done something like losing the bird out of frame for a second, and then it's much lower in the scene, or maybe like something wipes and then,
but they didn't want to lose the bird. You had to see the bird the whole time. Like it was the parameters were as such where it's like, okay, well we can extend the scene.
It's gonna look stupid if you go with their parameters, basically.
Yeah, but they wanted to extend the scene out like an extra 10 seconds to do it, and it just wouldn't have worked. You know, it's like, and the timing on the entire piece was already locked. You know, the edit was locked already.
Oh, that's like...
And so we would have had to retime the music because we special cut the music, and you know, all of a sudden everything is just thrown. So oh man, we got a lot more questions.
Oh yeah, we do.
All right, so
one small thing I was going to say is that, like, you know, a lot of the time if it looks like a client's going to be a huge headache, you can say no to the job too. You know, it's like if they're, I mean, that, you know, is not always an option for everyone, but if, you know, if it's like not that much money and you think it's just going to be like this person's clearly stupid and going in a stupid direction, then potentially you can just not do that one.
Right. Now I was working with an ad agency at the time, so I had no choice.
Right.
I had to do the job.
That's true. That is the nice thing. That's the thing that I've come to love about freelance, is that it's more of a self-directed, thing. It's almost like you can do your own research and you can pick and choose your jobs more. Like if you're working for a company, you might get something thrown on your plate, that just totally sucks. And often you have less control over what those jobs are going to be. And you're just kind of sitting around waiting for the next cool one rather than being proactive and trying to make it happen yourself.
Yeah. Next question. If you weren't doing 3D animation, what would you be doing? Dave, tour production and tour graphics is banned as being an answer. What would I be doing? I may have become a lawyer, but in the technical industry, like a technical lawyer, technology. I don't know.
Cool.
I think I know what you would have been.
What
neuroscience?
Tell me.
Neuroscientist.
No, that was never going to happen.
Your boys in Virginia had a huge discovery this week. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't.
They found out that there is in fact veins connected from the central nervous system, the immune system to the brain, which they thought that they had the whole body mapped, but they didn't.
Gotcha. Cool.
Something like that. I probably have it wrong, but.
I don't know, man. I don't really touch science anymore with a 10-foot pole or whatever that expression is. I mean, unless it's like computer sciencey, if it's like in the 3D, obviously, then I get really technical and geeky. But yeah, I just don't think I would have ever been a scientist unless, like, even in grad school, I found my niche, right? And my niche was actually I was doing 3D models. Actually, I was creating models of the Drosophila ventral nerve cord, which is a fruit fly. So I was like basically creating 3D models of single neurons or whatever. And I'm totally like, it's been so long that I'm kind of even forgetting what I did, but I was basically mapping, an entire segment of this nerve cord. And I would like go in and I had this software where I could see these stacks of images, microscope images in 3D. And basically I was converting those into actual 3D models, and then taking all those models and setting them into registration with each other to recreate the physical structure of this thing's nerve cord, which is like our spinal cord. And so I was already in the place that I probably would most naturally gravitate to, and I was still miserable. So I just really don't think I would have ever been a scientist. At some point
what would you be then?
I don't know, maybe a computer scientist. Maybe I would get into video game design. I think that would be my other thing. I love video games, and I would potentially learn programming and code and try to design my own video games or VR experiences. I think I'm in the right place, and if I weren't in this place, I would be in another kind of similar place.
Yeah.
Though my one other big passion that I've been doing for now over 10 years, though the past 4 or 5 years I've very much plateaued and stopped because I've kind of been more obsessive about all of this motion graphics and 3D stuff, is swing dancing. So really? I used to really avidly swing dance. I got super into it. It was really fun and rewarding because I would, I would get better. It's a thing where you learn more and you get better, and it becomes more and more addictive because you learn more, and then you have more and more fun dances with people, and it's a thing. It's just like any of these, any activity that like mountain climbing, whatever, any kind of physical or whatever activity, the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. And so I got pretty good at swing dancing. Maybe I would be a swing dance teacher.
So you're a Squirrel Nut Zippers fan.
No. So that's like the crappy, that's like the faux swing. So it's like the
wannabe
people that do it. Yeah. The people that do it frequently, listen to more authentic jazz music from like the 20s and 30s.
That's the stuff where you go in and out. The squirrel nut zippers. It's where you just kind of go in and out and do jazz hands the whole time. You don't really do much else.
Yeah, that stuff's terrible. Okay. So this is the technical term for it is Lindy Hop. And it's a pretty complex dance and very deep and hard to learn. And it's a social dance where you're leading and following, and everything it's like a conversation. When you get really good, you put something into the dance, and then the person following can put something into the dance, and it's to the music, and you're trying to be rhythmic and you're trying to be creative. So it's all within that same creative realm. So yeah, if I were doing something different, it would be something else creative, whether it's painting or drawing or,
Nice.
I thought I was going to be a scientist, and turns out I'm an artist. So yeah, I also did salsa dancing and Argentine tango for a while. Those are also really fun. And yeah.
Sweet.
All
right, so we gotta move a little faster through these because we're gonna run out of time.
Sorry.
Let's see. Just real quick, 10 duck-sized horses or horse-sized duck?
I think I'm with you on this one. If they were 100, no, it's 100 duck-sized horses, right?
Yeah, because you can just kick them all in the face.
Yeah, you kick them all in the face, you squash them. So, yeah, the one caveat is that if they had a hive mind, the swarming behaviors could be potentially more terrifying and ultimately lead to a more gruesome death. So, it kind of depends on what behavior the duck-sized horses have. So, yeah, that's my answer.
All right, let's see. All right, here's what we're gonna do, because we're coming up on 2 hours already, and we have so many more questions. I don't want to cut the questions short. And
thank you, by the way, Sage and other people in the Reddit, the subreddit that asked these questions. They were super good questions, and will give us a ton to talk about. So I might actually come on next week, you were saying, to finish these up.
Yeah, I think the best thing to do so that we can answer these in detail and not rush is just we'll do a couple more here, and then we're gonna save the rest because it's such good stuff, and it'll be cool because we can have Matt with us on the show. We can all talk about it.
He'll have some answers. It'll be a triple bro podcast. Yes.
So, hang in there, but you'll get better answers if you wait until next week for the full answers instead of having us rush. Because now I'm down to the wire on time.
Yeah, he's got to go do family business.
I got to pick up my daughter unexpectedly, and we've had some unexpected power outages and such go on during the show.
There's a storm coming for me, and might happen again. So
luckily we have battery backups, so we're gonna ease out of this here. Okay, so a couple more. What game have you spent the most time playing?
Right. I definitely have some stuff to talk about on this one, but I'll try to keep it not too crazy.
Have you found yourself using any design elements or ideas from it in your 3D job?
So I, in college, played Smash Bros. Melee, like on crack and actually I started playing, I've been playing Smash Bros. For like 15 years now. So as far as like purely how much have I been playing this game, or the game I've played the most, it's definitely Super Smash Bros. And like in college, my friend and I used to, like the night before test, we were convinced that it made us sharper. So we'd like train and like, battle each other until like 2 a.m. And it's like, okay, now let's study. And we'd stay up all night and study. And then,
I have heard that it can make you sharper.
It like keeps
your reflexes. I don't know.
Yeah, it's your reflexes, and it's like mind games. It feels at some point like it's an extension of your body, and you're just like battling out with your wills. It can get super intense when you get good at it, and so that's what was so addictive to me. Is we were just constantly up the ante, and like it was actually 3 of us, and like each week one person would discover some new technique to get the edge over the others, right? And then the next week it'd be someone else would be winning more, and so it was like this constant like pissing contest of of like who could be the best at Smash Bros. So yeah, that took up so much time in college. And then I got addicted to Halo, and that took a ton of time. But as far as like design elements that I pull from games, those I would say are not ones that I really would pull a lot of inspiration or design elements from.
Yeah.
For me, those are games that are like, often single player, like the Mass Effect series. Have you played any of those?
I haven't played those, no.
It's like super sci-fi, beautiful worlds, incredible story. I gravitate more towards sci-fi a lot of the time. Like Portal and Portal 2 had a lot of really cool design language. The Metroid Prime series, that's a Nintendo one, made you feel like you're in this alien isolated universe and just kind of gave you this vast feeling. The Last of Us was another really beautiful one.
Oh, that's a great one.
Yeah. And then I like to think, so the one piece that I've done that we can link to, I like to think it has a BioShock Infinite vibe. Have you ever played BioShock Infinite?
Oh yeah, I love BioShock.
So this one, I've got like kind of this this destroyed world sitting in this ocean, and like roller coaster and Ferris wheel are like popping out of the sea, and like there's this flickering sign, and it's just got this glow about it that to me looks a lot like BioShock Infinite, because they really cranked the bloom on BioShock, and maybe I just think it looks that way because it was like one of my first big Octane projects, and I really cranked that post-processing bloom. So don't want to pat myself on the back too much, but it's called Storyland Pictures Logo Resolve. So that was one of the most fun projects for me. And then other games that I really love the art of, Fez. Have you ever heard of the game Fez?
No, haven't heard of that one.
So this is like away from photorealism and more towards like, let's go EJ or like pixel. It's like pixel art, but it's like all 2D, and you can the gimmick of the game is that you can rotate the world in 3D. So it's like actually a 3D world, and he has the power to traverse things in 3D. So you kind of solve puzzles by rotating the entire world. And again, it had this like very ambient and isolated feel, and I really love the pixel art in it. So two more, like Journey, which is like you're traveling to this giant mountain. Yep,
I have it sitting right here. It's a short game.
Sweet. Short game, but massive feel, like flowing animation, glimmering sand, depth haze, all this beautiful stuff, atmospheric. I think the biggest one for me is Shadow of the Colossus. Have you heard of that one?
I've heard of it, but I don't know anything about it.
So it's like this Japanese game, I guess. Like it's just very isolated feel, but the worlds are huge, and the thing it does the best is the sense of like composition and scale. So you feel like an ant, and your job is to like battle these 10 or 12 giants. You have to traverse the land on your horse, and everything is completely deserted and empty, and then you stumble upon one of these like old giants, and the design of the creatures is so cool, and they like loom over you, and you have to actually climb them and find a way. It's basically a puzzle game, but you have to find a way to climb these dudes and take them down with your sword and like hack away at their like weak spot. But it just makes you like feel really microscopic and like, I don't know. So I really like epic imagery, right? So like when I make images, I want them to look like The Wanderers, kind of that space short that I showed you, Wanderers, or like The Third and the Seventh, is another big one.
It's one of my all-time favorites.
All-time favorite, hugely inspirational. And those don't necessarily have like an amazing story, but they give you this sense of awe and vastness. And to me, that still gives me the feels, so like that, while it's maybe not like the most lofty goal, like a lot of people want to tell a really awesome story, and like I certainly wouldn't mind telling you a really awesome story, but just the base level, I'd like for the images I make to look vast and epic and expansive. That's kind of, I guess, what I gravitate towards. So games like that, I definitely find inspirational.
I play, my two go-to games have always been Halo and GTA, and they always kind of come out staggered. Halo 1 year and then GTA a couple years later, and back and forth. So it just depends on which one we're at, which one I play the most of. Right now, I kind of play both a lot, because I had GTA on 360, then I got an Xbox One, and I bought an Xbox One, and then I built a gaming machine, and I decided to buy it on there. So like I have 3 copies of GTA, so I'm like playing it a lot to get my money's worth. And the new Halo is just ridiculous, so much fun.
Yeah, I'm
and
jealous. I really want to play it.
It's so good, and the graphics are incredible. Now in Halo, I don't get a lot out of the actual game. like as far as inspiration. But I do on GTA, especially now, because for one thing, playing GTA, when you're walking through those vast, expansive maps and such, you're like looking down at like a road and you're like, look how all the stripes for all the traffic and the turn lanes and the arrows and the writing on the street and all of that is all there. Somebody did all of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Every little thing that you look down on the ground, somebody placed. And there's probably one person whose job is to do all of that for the entire game.
You're the stripes guy.
Yeah. Like, all of this stuff, the trash blowing around on the ground, somebody's responsibility to build that. All the branding, all these little, things that they sell, the different Coke products and the different packages that they sell at every store that you go into that are all the same, and they match with the television and radio advertisements. And I'm like, man, that's crazy. But the big thing to me, especially doing Octane now, because I'm more concerned with lower poly count now, is looking at GTA and saying, look what they can do with a low poly count.
Yeah, totally. It's frustrating, like, seeing these games that technically, like, the imagery that you spend forever weeks rendering should look better than video games, because video games play back in real time, but that's not true because we're just solo artists, and they've got like a whole team of people working for years to make this art, and they've optimized the crap out of it to look beautiful in spite of the fact that it has to be low poly and work on a game engine.
And they do some incredible things making textures look like they have depth when they don't, totally. Adding shadows and stuff, or maybe they're cheats, they might be building stuff and then baking it out and then putting it back in just to get it.
That's absolutely what they do, yeah.
And all these little areas, but man, I mean, I'll look at things and he'll jump in the water and he'll get out, and the first thing you notice is the specular on his clothing is higher. It's closer to white because he was in the water, and so now he has a higher specular gloss on all of his clothes, and his footprints are in the dirt now, and there's so many little details like that, and I'm like, man, so much attention to detail. And of course Portal, I like Portal not for the inspirational reason, but for, like you were saying, like something that keeps you thinking, because I feel like I'm actually not wasting my time as much when I'm playing a video game that requires you to use a lot of thinking.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to put this portal here and I'm going to jump through it, and this is how gravity would work if I were to go this way, and then I'm going to jump, and then I'm going to use these, you can use the colored goop now and the new one totally. And all that. That I really like.
The design is so well thought out.
Yeah. But I don't, I kind of always stick with those. So I don't know.
Totally.
Now, I think we're gonna come back to questions. I wanted to hit on one thing before we go.
Can I insert one more thing real quick?
Yeah.
So like in the same topic, I was actually listening this week to someone posted on Twitter and said that I should check out the Animalators podcast, which is actually another motion graphics podcast. So apparently one other one exists. But I was
I did see that. I saw that.
Yeah, so I was listening to it, and this same topic kind of came up with this one dude. It was their most recent podcast with Andrew Vucko, which sounds kind of like another word, but he. So I had actually seen some of his stuff. So he has like this, what are they called? Motion font, I don't know we used one of them on our Zika job. Yeah. So he's generated one of those, and it's amazing looking. And this guy does 2D animation on crack, like some of the best stuff I've ever seen. But he was saying his biggest inspiration is actually DDR, Dance Dance Revolution. So he played that, and I think he got to like at one point in Canada got to like 4th place in the nation. Jeez. Or whatever. So he was like major addicted. Wow. And I actually, before I even did swing dancing, I did DDR as well, and I still to this day play it. Emma and I go and play it for exercise. It's fantastic exercise. You have to get the timing down. It started rhythm games. There's DDR, then there's Guitar Hero and Rock Band and all that.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the Guitar Hero. I have beaten all the games on expert level.
Nice. There you go. Yeah, me too. Yeah. Me too. I think I don't know if I did all the games, but I definitely I was able to beat all the songs, I think, on expert for the most part.
There's a video of me doing the final crazy song that's on like I don't know, Guitar Hero 3 or Rock Band 3, like that ridiculous 10-minute song that's so crazy. There's a video somewhere of me doing that.
In the first one it was Freebird, but then the next, I can't remember what the third one is. Yeah.
So that's a good one.
But yeah, anyway, so like this dude, he said that most of his inspiration came from DDR because of these backgrounds and specifically like the timing. He learned, and you can see it in his animation, his timing is impeccable. And like, it's really interesting that he derives so much inspiration from a video game that I don't think of is that visual. It's not that visual. It's just arrows moving upwards, and like the backgrounds are like weird, crappy looking 90s trippy stuff, but like he, that's what he feels like trained his brain to animate properly and really work out the timing and motion of things, which is pretty cool. So he had basically a cooler answer than I do, so I thought I'd throw that in there.
Well, okay, we're going to save the other ones because I think you're going to get better quality content out of us if we wait cool. Again. So one thing I wanted to touch on before we go, just because it was something that just came up, is that there is a kind of a hacked version of Octane that is running on Pascal architecture right now. And Nikolai, I think that's how you say it, Jensen, he posted some tests that he did of some of the test scenes that are out there for Octane. Now, this is not for Cinema 4D. This is just for the standalone render, this version that's out there. You can get it and try it if you want. So, but it's apparently it's hacked together because it's not really running. It's like a hacked 7.5 to work with CUDA 8. So I believe that's what it is. Now, he posted them, and I was like, dude, I'm curious to see what the comparison is between this and the 980 Ti. So we've talked about him on the show before. Raphael, how do you pronounce his last name? Rao. Okay. He actually posted his same versions of those so we could see the difference with 980. He posted them in the Facebook group, which is a great Facebook group, by the way, if you haven't checked that out, the Octane Render Facebook group. The scenes, the screws scene, the 1080 Founders Edition card was 1:14, and Raphael's version on the 1080 was 1:13. So it was 1 second difference.
Okay.
The chest scene was 27 seconds to 24 seconds, so the 980 was actually faster. The other comparison he did in there was the spaceship scene with the little toy spaceships. That's like a classic test scene they have. 1 minute and 2 seconds on the 1080 Founders Edition and 1 minute on the 980. And that one, I believe, for that scene, those were running, that was a dual 1080 as opposed to a dual 980 Ti. Gotcha.
Sounds like, kind of like we were saying before, you really need to wait for the flagship editions of the cards. So like wait till the 1080 Ti, because it doesn't sound that different right now.
Don't throw away your 980s just yet.
Yeah, totally.
But again, also, this isn't like the final working version of Octane either. It's kind of a slap together for all I know. I don't know exactly the inner workings of it. This is just what I read right before the show. So I'll try and find out some more information about it for next week's show.
Cool.
We have plenty more questions we're going to get to next week, including an email from one of our very few female listeners, Sarah, who had an interesting question for me that I asked her if we could mention it on the show because I thought it was a good question. It was a good topic to bring up. And man, there's a bunch of other stuff I really want to go over, but rather than rush through it, I think we'll save it, and that'll give us some content for next week. Because I don't know, I'm gonna be laid out for most of the week, I think, and I probably won't.
Recovering.
Yeah, I won't have. I'll need some material for next week. So
cool.
Thanks for hanging in with us here while I'm like in this condition. So you can rate us on iTunes, leave a review. You can subscribe to us if you don't already subscribe to us for the podcast on a podcast catcher of choice. You can say you've been there, done that, got the t-shirt with the No Brograph, No Mograph tee. I'm going to post a picture of my wife and and my daughter wearing their Brograph tees from this week. They posted it on Facebook. I'm going to put it on our Brograph page, as well as a picture of Jeremy and his new rig. And if you want to take our relationship to the next level, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course YouTube and Brograph.com. So thanks for being a guest for 2 weeks, man.
Absolutely. It's going to be 3 weeks now.
It's going to be 3 weeks.
I'm just like, jumping on this train and hanging out with you guys constantly.
It's good though, man. I'm glad that we have enough questions to where we can actually spread them out this long. It makes for some good topics, because we get drained of topics sometimes, and we don't, or sometimes we don't have time to think about topics because we're working so much.
You're working so hard. Though having good jobs also can add to the topics, because like I feel like I've been getting some kind of lame, or like not necessarily lame, but not 3D specific jobs lately, and it's hard to talk about them on the podcast, because it's like there's not that much to talk about with those.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I do like logo animations almost every single day that are just nothing to talk about. They're just your run of the mill. So
yeah, exactly.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll be back next week. Hopefully, Matt, you're listening to this on the plane back. And
we're providing Matt with so much entertaining content.
I know. And so safe flight for him, coming back Wednesday into Thursday.
Yep.
And that's it. Thanks a lot.
Yep. Thanks. Later, bros.
Later. It's pretty good, I guess. Brograph.com, an online resource for learning critical components of Cinema 4D and After Effects, specifically catered to help you prevail as a motion graphic designer.
What's up, bros? Welcome to another Brograph motion graphics tutorial.
We give you professional time-saving tips, shortcuts, and lessons that help give you an edge over your fellow designers. Not only this, but our new Brograph Talks help you in your file management, hardware configuration, and client relations.
I love projects that scare me. When our art director comes to us and asks for something that I had never done before, man, it gets me pumped.
Join us for live sessions, check out our crazy Cinema 4D experiments, or just watch our Fun with Brograph series, where we show you practical applications for techniques learned in previous tutorials. Do this from the beginning, and your client is going to respect that, and they're going to respect you, and they're going to respect your time. Subscribe today and get automatic updates on the latest tutorials, tricks, tips, and inspiration brought to you by industry professionals Dave Koss and Matt Milstead, all with a slight dash of dry humor peppered in. Real nice banana.
Brograph.com, your source for tutorials that will help you thrive in the motion graphics industry. Don't just play around with Cinema 4D and After Effects, master it, and make money by becoming indispensable at your workplace.
We don't care how you get here, folks. Just get here. Subscribe now to Brograph Tutorials. It's pretty good, I guess.